Today, we're exploring a powerful idea: what we can all learn from the courage, empathy, and crisis management skills of helping professionals. Our guest, Dr. Michael Kaufman, has spent decades as a social worker, a CEO, and now is the author of Doing Good and Doing Well, studying how those in fields like healthcare, education, and social services bring extraordinary skills to leadership, skills that are valuable in any field and in everyday life. In this episode, Michael shares how those frontline skills, like spotting warning signs, de escalating conflict, and maintaining compassion in tough moments, can benefit us all from our workplaces to our personal lives. Whether you're navigating challenges in your own life, looking to improve as a leader, or simply interested in becoming more resilient, this conversation is filled with practical wisdom and inspiring insights. So let's dive in. Mike, welcome to the show.
Jillian, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. Obviously, I'm an ER nurse myself, so this is also related to me and what I do. So this should be fun and kind of exciting to go back and forth and kind of chat about this. But before we go to all your work, I want to know about kind of your inspiring journey. What maybe share a bit about your path, what motivated you to write your book, Doing Good and Doing Well?
Great. Yeah, my journey started with loving helping people. My whole life, when I was younger, I was a volunteer and I just enjoyed working with kids and doing anything I could to be a helpful type of person. And when you go to school, a lot of us were pushed to be doctors, lawyers, accountants, and things like that. So I was going to be an accountant. I was set to do that. I got my degree in accounting from Rutgers, and my senior year, you get an internship when you do accounting. I got a job at Ernst& and Young. I should have been excited about it, and I wasn't.
Hmm.
Instead of doing the internship, I worked at the Center for Cognitive Rehabilitation with people with head injuries,
Mhm.
and I loved it. I just loved working with people who really needed me. I found a passion for it, and somebody at the job, my boss there, had something called an MSW, a Master's in Social Work. I didn't know you could get that. So I was like, wow, that's a degree and it's a field I could go down. So when I met her and I was like, this is what I would do for free. So there was maybe three things I wanted to do for my life. I wanted to be the quarterback for the New York Jets.
Of
Not good
course.
enough. I wanted to be a lead
Aaron
singer.
Rodgers here.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do any worse right now, but
Right?
I want I wanted to be a lead singer of a band. My voice isn't that good. Or I wanted to help people. I can do that. That one I can
Mhm.
do. And I just started on my way, got my MSW. And then, when you talk about Malcolm Gladwell and those 10,000 hours, building the 10,000 hours, I, was an intern at the VA hospital working with veterans,
Mm.
prisoner of war veterans, Vietnam veterans, learning so much about that. Got a job at the Boys and Girls Clubs, started working in schools. And then I was going for my doctorate at Rutgers. I was on call if anyone was suicidal at all of
Mm.
Rutgers College overnight. I was the person who got called there. And then I started working at schools for kids with special needs. And that's where I found my true passion, my true calling, and I loved it. And what I did is I faced that crossroads that a lot of us in the helping professions do, where we're helping people and we feel that we were given this mission and this calling to do good. But what I learned is I have a caseload now as a social worker of like 40 kids. Do I want a caseload of the whole school? Or do I want a caseload of the whole company? And I made that decision that I can still do good and help people while getting into leadership. And then I took off from there. So I started as a director in training for this small company, then worked to be a director of a school, the chief operating officer, the CEO, president, CEO. We grew it to $100 million. And so we did all that. I loved it. Then I've gone out on my own and done some things, and I worked with private equity. So I got to see it all. So the book, writing a book now, unless you're like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, it's really a book. It's like a business card, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Mhm.
something to do, like, to get your word out there where people might give you a little bit more credibility, and if you
Yeah.
go through a publishing company. And it was a bucket list, so combine my passions of teaching graduate school at Rutgers, all those lessons I learned, leading this big company, going from a social worker to a business guy, so to speak,
Mhm.
and putting all those lessons together and all the pitfalls I went through and just putting it all out there and presenting it, I hope, in a fun way.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to like dive into the book and the things that you kind of have helped people through as well. I know you describe like helping professionals, as our everyday heroes, and you highlight their potential as leaders. Why do you think this potential is often overlooked, and what do you hope to change with your work?
I think it's overlooked because people saw us as the soft skill champions. We're great
Mm,
listeners. We're compassionate. We're
mhm,
kind. We're nice. All true. And we've actually held ourselves back a little bit to say,
mhm,
I was given this calling, but maybe I shouldn't push it and want to lead the organizations that I'm in. So I think it's people seeing us with the soft skills, and we don't really have soft skills. We have the hard skills too. We can do everything that anyone else can do. And if you think about it, Jillian, you're a trauma nurse. Look at everything that you've seen. So does
mhm.
because you've seen life and death, you've
Literally.
seen
Mhm,
blood, you've seen people yelling and screaming, you've had to give terrible news to families, positive
mhm.
news to families. Do you think it would be hard if you saw results that your financial results are slipping? That's easy for you, right? It's easy for me because
Yeah.
we've been there. One thing I was really inspired by is one of your podcasts. You interviewed a woman named Jen Johnson, another
Mhm,
nurse,
mhm. Yeah,
much
yeah.
like you. And I was really taken by her honesty of everything a nurse goes through. And I was
Mm,
like, oh my goodness, like this stuff is if you can do that, you can do everything. So I
mm,
think I'm just trying to get out there that those skills are as incredible as getting an MBA, understanding a financial statement. I think you can learn those things. You
mhm,
can take a quick books course and learn
mhm.
finances, but can you learn how to walk into a crisis situation? Somebody in an ER that was shot and their family member is sitting right next to them and everybody's out of control and you don't know if this person's going to live or die. You just don't, we can handle that stuff. And I
Yeah,
think that it gets underplayed. So
yeah.
I'm here to say that the soft leadership skills are as good as the hard leadership skills, which are like those, how are your financials doing? Are you holding everybody accountable? We can do all those things. It's not too
Yeah.
hard to learn that.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and it made me think of last time I was on a plane and there was a crisis, and I just like jump up, and they were like, "I'm an ER nurse," and they were like, "Oh, well, we have to have a doctor to give this medication." I'm like, "No, you don't. Give it to me. I do this all day long. I don't need the doctor." And this girl was actually in like anaphylactic shock. She was about to be, and she was about to pass out. And I'm like, and I'm literally back there, like, give me the medication, like, give me the EpiPen, and they were, like, calling to see about the doctor, and meanwhile, this girl is, like, and I'm like, "Open the bag," and, like, and my husband and I get back to my seat, and everything turned out fine. I ended up giving her the EpiPen, and they found some doctor on board, that came back there eventually. That I don't know if they have to sign a paper or whatever, but and he's like, "I'm just waiting to the point where you'll just go get your doctorate just so you can be like, 'I'm gonna run the show, excuse me,'" and it's true. Like, when and you have those crises and you know what to do, and it's funny how, like, but in other situations, we might be timid, right? Or like you're saying, like in a leadership role in another environment, I'm not taking those same actions, right? Like like the first one to stand up and go back there, like, give me the situation, give me the things, I'm going to do it right now. When I put myself in a different situation, those things might actually not come out. Why do you think that is, and what can we do about it?
Yeah. Well, the one thing is that I think what was great about you is you were the helping folks are the ones who raised their hand the first to be there and help in these kind of crises where a lot of people would want to keep their mouth quiet in that point. I remember having a friend who was a doctor telling me that if he was ever in a restaurant, somebody was choking, he would not get up and help because his mind went to, I'll get sued by the family if
Oh,
I break a rib, taking something, trying to do
oh,
the
that's
Heimlich
scary.
maneuver,
Mhm.
right? Instead of where I think all of us, the nurses, the social workers, we wouldn't think that way.
Mm-mm.
There's a
Phew.
crisis, there's a life to save. We're going to jump out and we're going to do it. And I think that there's what we're confident in when we're helping people, we will be the first in line. If we're not confident in it or feel that we're competent, we sometimes will get to the back of the line.
Mhm.
And I think that we need to realize that we have all these kind of skills that anybody else does. A lot of times when I talk to helping people, they'll be like, okay, you're right. I can save a life and I am there, but I don't know anything about key performance indicators of a business, right? Like
Mhm, mhm.
any business has KPIs. I remember hearing that term, like, what the heck is a
Yeah,
KPI?
yeah.
And then, but yeah, we're more used to that than anyone. We have charts that we have to maintain. We have to have results. We have to write notes,
Mm-hmm.
client notes. So we have key performance indicators, and our job it relies upon that. So I think there's such a lack of confidence that a lot of us carry on being a true leader. We have tons of confidence in just helping. Being that first person on the line, I can help you. But if you need to do something on a higher level, maybe look to somebody else who can do it instead of us. And I just feel that we have to remove those barriers. Listen,
Hmm.
when I write this book, I even say it in there. If you don't want to become a leader, that's great. We need people that want to just be helping folks and stay in that lane. But if you want to get outside that lane and you always felt it, get outside the lane. I was having lunch with somebody who is a BCBA, trained to work with folks with autism, and she's in an organization, and she was just so frustrated that they keep bringing in pharmaceutical sales leaders to run the business, or somebody with an
Mm.
MBA, and she had all the answers. I go, why don't you just throw your hat in the ring and you can do it? And she's like, yeah, but I just don't want to run a business. I don't want all that headache. But you're already dealing with the headaches. Like, we all deal with the headaches. Like, can't you do it? Don't do you find inspiration in leading people? Give it a shot and try it. So sometimes it's just getting out of our own way. A lot of times we put up our own barriers to it.
So good.
Yeah, there was an article written in the New York Times recently about folks on the stock market wanting to hire teachers because they feel they're the
Mm.
best trained people to be diverse performers, be on the fly. They know how to work hard without taking a bathroom break. Nurses, the same thing.
Yeah, right?
And
Bladders of steel.
exactly.
That's actually your nervous system not going into rest and digest, so we're too in our sympathetic all the
Yes.
time.
Right. So, we have it. And when you said it, like, sympathetic, so we
Yeah.
are sympathetic. So what I've learned is to tie sympathy and empathy with accountability.
Hmm.
And that's what takes the helping professional to the business professional. Being sympathetic, kind, and that's what we're all great on. So I use a continuum with folks that I lead and say, what are you better at, empathy or accountability? All of us were way on empathy. Now that you're great on empathy, be good on accountability. Because if you can't bring some accountability with the empathy, you can't lead. So you need to work out the other muscle also. I remember I was running a school once for students with special needs, and my one teaching assistant, she came up to me and said, Mike, you are amazing with the kids, but you're awful with the staff. You let them get away with everything. When they come in late, you say hi. You give the same smile to them, to those that are coming in on time. Everyone likes you, but the respect for you is starting to wane a little. This was early in my career, and it stung a little, but I never will forget her for that amazing lesson, because I was all empathy and I
Yeah.
needed the accountability. So what I would do is I would go in front of a meeting, a staff meeting, and say, everyone, we got to come in on time. We're a school. If one of you are out, the whole school suffers. And then the 20 people that are doing a good job sit there quietly because they're like, well, I do come in on time. The one guy that was coming in late all the time, shaking his head, yeah, Mike, you're right. So I'm basically the one guy who needed to hear it, didn't hear it. He was like, and the people that didn't need to hear it heard it. So it's almost like that thing in recess back when we were in school. One kid did something wrong, we all lose recess, right?
Yeah.
Little Joey did something, everyone loses recess. That's not fair. So as a leader, I'm like, well, if one person is doing something that's not right, let me sit down with that person and give them the feedback. It's actually the kindest thing you can do is to tell somebody, be direct, be honest. And thinking you're being kind by keeping a secret and holding it all in is not being kind at all.
I really enjoy that point, actually. I think it's really important. I think that is something that I see a lot. Uh, and we don't want to like disrupt the status quo, or we don't want to be the bad guy or whatever. And you're right, feedback is kind. And I think that we all appreciate it. And we all appreciate it when it's on our own, too, I think, right? Like criticism is not my husband, we were talking about my husband before we jumped on too. He always has these wonderful words to say, and he has this whole saying on criticism. I totally am not going to do it any justice, but something about how like it's done, you know, you praise in front and you criticize like in person or like separately.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah. There's something I espouse in leadership very similar to what your husband said. It's tough on results, soft on people. So if
mm,
you have a result you need to get, like, we have a school and we're
mhm,
running it. You got to have you have to be solvent, right? You need to be in the profitability. So if the
mhm,
school our enrollment's down, the profit's going to go down. So let's look at the enrollment. How can I help you? I'm going to be tough on the result because we have to break even or do better, but I'm going to be really kind to you at the same
mhm,
time. So I'm
mhm,
going to be like, how can I help you to do it? How can we do this together? What am I maybe not doing to help you? So soft on the person, but still tough on the result. And be kind. And to go that I used to use something I used to call the Oreo method of giving tough feedback is
mm,
the Oreo, the give the some tell somebody something they're doing great. That's the front of the cookie. The middle is the tough feedback, and then end it really positively with the other
mhm,
side of the cookie.
mhm,
So if you're going to give tough feedback, don't just give it when you only have 5 minutes to do
mhm,
it. Make sure you have enough time. I'm a big fan of giving tough feedback, sometimes out of the office. Let's go out and get a cup of coffee together so
mhm,
you won't be bothered or a crisis won't come up, because you want to give time to say, hey, everything I said today was a little tough. I gave you some tough feedback. How do you feel?
mhm,
How are you
mhm.
doing right now with it? And I'm going to check in tomorrow with you also, because sometimes we all go home and process it.
Yeah,
So that's this whole thing of it being real. We have to, there's results we all have to make, but that doesn't mean we have to be really tough on the person at the same
mhm,
time.
yeah. What about, what are some crisis management skills that you learned that you think are critical for leaders in any field today?
Well, I think, the ability we mentioned it, l- you know, again, with you being a trauma nurse and things like that, handling life and death situations, like the calming influence that we have,
Mhm, mhm,
our ability to understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a
mhm,
crisis.
mhm,
All of
mhm.
us get, if you're in a crisis, do you have a home? Do you have
Yeah,
clothes? Do you have food? Do you have support of somebody? We're going to go right to those basics and make sure you have those. And we're not
yeah,
going to let you leave us until that foundation's there. We're not going to send you home empty-handed. And that we have that ability to look at that and to see, even with people that you're leading, the support they have. We have something called grit. We're really tough and strong, which a lot of people don't realize. We're compassionate, but we're compassionate with strength. There's a
mhm.
lot of strength there. And what's really cool is when Corona happened, we all of a sudden became the rock stars, especially nurses. In New York City, people banging the pots and pans. Where did we ever hear this term frontline workers?
Yeah,
It was great to see everyone sort of say, these are the people we should be thanking that are keeping a country going. And who didn't fall apart? I knew a couple of high level CEOs that wouldn't leave their house and stayed in their basement during Corona. We didn't have that luxury. I
yeah,
ran schools for students with special needs. We were in the school the next day. We were bringing water bottles, putting it on the bottom of their driveway. We were bringing laptops. We were making sure we called Verizon for the families to make sure they had internet access. There
mm,
was no, I'm going to hide in a corner or I'm going to deal with this. And especially a nurse. Imagine that. Like, your husband, how nervous was he if you were going to be like, there's Corona. I don't know what this
yeah.
is. And I'm just going to put on a mask and go into work.
We actually got into a little bit of a fight over it,
I'm
to be
sure.
honest, because, I was, like, so excited, to be honest. I was like, "I have prepared my entire career for this, like, move over." I was like and they at one point, they talked about putting us in, like, bunny suits because they weren't really sure, like, how it was gonna be, and so it was like, "Okay, we'll be in bunny suits for" I call them bunny suits, but they're, like, isolation, like, literally, like, looks like a space suit type of situation. And I'm like, "Well, I can hold my bladder for, like, 8 hours, like, I am so good," like and then they were talking about, like, taking shifts where you would, like, go in and then you would take, like, your 8-hour break and you would sleep, and then you would go back into your so you would, like, have a partner and you'd rotate and stuff like that. And I was so excited, I was like, "I can't wait," and I'm telling my husband, like, "I might not be able to come home for a few days if that actually happens," and he's looking at me like, I don't think so, and I'm like, "I think so, yes, I'm going," like, I also just, like, I didn't have, I wasn't, like, scared about it, I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be fine, I've been through everything, like, this is fine," I didn't feel, like, scared about it, but it was like, he was like, "Are you kidding? Like, you're doesn't your family mean more if we don't know?" And I'm like, "It's gonna be fine," you know?
Yeah.
I
Well,
couldn't wait, and I mean, like, I don't know how everybody feels about it, but, like, from a emergency standpoint, like, I was actually kinda disappointed. Like, I was, like, waiting for, like, it to look like New York and what we heard on TV, and that's not what happened in my city, you know? So I was, like, kinda bored, like, "Hey, I didn't get to wear my bunny suit." You know? But yeah, it is true.
And you were the thing is, again, what are we? We're proactive. That's why
Yeah.
you weren't scared of it. It's already gone through your mind, a crisis. You
Yeah.
already processed this, that this is going to happen. A lot, those of us in the helping professions look at, there's two types of things. There's those that have gone through a crisis and those that will. So we don't think we never are going to go through it. We are prepared for it. We're ready for it. We're
Mhm.
ready to rock and roll. So there is no thing that scares us. And that's what leads me to why we can do this, right? Because
Mm.
when I would go into these high level board level meetings, with people on my board with degrees from Harvard and
Yeah.
Princeton, they were just like, "Okay, Mike, you have Plan A. What's Plan B and C?" That was easy for me. So they will love that. Where they're like, "Okay, you have a Plan A for how we're going to grow the business. You have Plan B, Plan
Mhm.
C, and even Plan D." So they love that, where most CEOs have an arrogance to them that we don't. That's another thing. There's a humility that we have. So a CEO, a traditional CEO might walk in and go, "This is what we're going to do, and it's going to work."
Mm.
No, we
Mhm.
we get that of all plans. What's that great line from Mike Tyson? We all have a plan till you get punched in the face.
Yeah. And then we'll
All
get
of us,
another plan.
yeah, and all of us in the helping professions have got punched in the face,
Yeah.
whether, by reality. So we can pivot. And
Yeah.
that's a great skill in business, the
Yeah.
ability to pivot and never stay stagnant and move. If, you look at, for instance, Uber and the taxi cab business. When the taxi cab business saw Uber coming along, they didn't pivot. If a
Mhm.
helping
Mhm.
professional ran a taxi cab, they would have said, "Oh my gosh, there's this thing coming out here that's going to overtake us." They're holding their ground. And I see cable TV doing this now with streaming, right? Netflix, Hulu, cable TV business, they're not pivoting. They're holding their ground.
Yeah.
Cable, we're going to survive. We're not changing. This is what got us here. And I think it's going to end up, they're going to have a problem because everyone's moving to streaming and now you can stream your cable. So businesses that can pivot and move and see the trends are
Yeah.
the ones that survive.
Yeah. Well, what about like the leaders? Like, let's say they are leading right now and they want to get better at this stuff, right? And they want to be able to have some of these skills, people that are listening. They're like, okay, well, I'm not a frontline person, or I was never a frontline person. I'm not an educator. I'm not a nurse. I'm not, but I want to develop these skills better. What do you suggest?
I suggest doing everything like those old school first one to a bit office, last to leave. One thing I used to do whenever I lead a business, I do something, I give everyone an employee a passport and you have to get it stamped. So you have to talk to people in finance, you have to talk to the people in HR, you
Mm.
have to talk to people in operations and you get it stamped. So learn the whole business. Um,
Mm.
Advocate. One thing that I've seen is we in the helping professions are amazing at advocating for our patients, our clients. We are not great at advocating for ourselves. So we have to get better at that. Advocate for yourself. Throw it
Mhm.
out there. I want to move up in this organization. What can I do? Join committees, read books. There's so many incredible leadership books out there. There's ones like
Mhm.
the ones I wrote, but there's great coaches books. There's great CEOs. Jack Welch's book that he wrote, a leadership book, the guy who ran GE.
Mhm.
Pat Riley's book on coaching. There's great books to read. Is just advocate for yourself, learn, read, and take a chance and always, if there's a new opportunity or something to do, take it. If
Mhm.
somebody's like, "Oh God, I need somebody to do this," do it. Even if you don't really want to do it, take the opportunity because we learn as much from things we don't want to do as we learn from things we do want to do. Just like we learn as much from bosses we had that you're
Mhm.
like, "Oh my God, I never want to do what that boss did." But I do wish that upon everyone. You need to see that to know the kind of boss you want to be. So
Yeah.
it's great to have an amazing boss all the time, but sometimes you want to see some of those skills and attributes that you don't want to have. It's just embrace becoming a leader, and take some courses and don't run from what you're scared of. There's really interesting. I do a workshop and I use Goldman's 6 different leadership styles, and
Mhm.
one is democratic, one's commanding, and all these things. And a lot of people in our field pick the affiliative leader, the democratic leader. And what I always say at the end is, once you find the leadership one that fits you, you got to, if you want to be a great leader, you have to be good at all six of them. So the command and control, you might think, I never want to be a commanding and controlling leader. And probably over time, you don't ever want to be that, but there are times you have to be. If the business is going down, when Corona happened, sometimes you just have to be somebody who can pick up, and just say, we have to take control of this right now and get to it. So
Yeah.
develop all aspects of your leadership repertoire. Don't just stick with what you're great at.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes, it's helpful to know where your blind spots are. Some people may not see, um, you know, something that they are missing, maybe, like, and so maybe you're listening to this podcast and go, you know what, I really could, use more information in that area. Maybe that is something I want to improve on. Do you have any advice on, people that maybe aren't aware of their blind spots yet?
Yes, and there's an exercise I do. It's called taming your demons. Is
Okay.
understanding what your own personal demons are. So I would do this exercise with people called I'm not X, I'm Y, and take something really negative you were told as a kid. So when I was a kid, I was told by my dad that we're great now, but he was that tough old school guy.
Yeah.
Mike, you're dumb, you're stupid. So my thing is I'm not dumb, I'm smart. Right?
Mm.
That was that thing I had as a kid.
Mm.
So what has that led to demons for me? I can be insecure. I can sometimes want to people please. I
Mhm.
cannot make decisions because I don't want to upset people. So I needed to realize I did all these things as a leader and I
Mhm.
was doing these things and they were affecting me as a leader. They were frustrating the people that I led. So I tried to understand my own personal demons. Maybe it's going to therapy to understand your personal demons. But if you're somebody that's open enough to look at them and then ask the people you lead, what can you work on? That is a really cool thing is I'll
Mhm.
go when you do a supervision, so many people do supervision sitting behind their big desk as the CEO. I'll go to the person's office that I'm leading where they're in the power position. They're sitting behind their desk and I'm in your office sitting in the chair in front of you. And I'll say, "What am I doing good? How can I help you more?" And then if you keep hearing something from people and if you put it out there to want to hear, it's probably true. Where there's some
Mhm.
smoke, there's some fire. So I used to ask people, and I'm 57 now, but I've constantly tried to get better. And I see myself to where I'm non-defensive. I was a really defensive leader in the
Mhm.
past. If you
Mhm.
told me something great, I was good. But if you told me something I was negative at, I could shut down and act like I hate to say it, like a little baby.
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
running.
Yeah.
And then if you do that, no one's ever going to come to me again. They're
Yep.
never going to tell me tough feedback. So what
Yeah.
they're going to do is they're going to sit around the coffee and say, Mike is like, I'm not telling him anything. So
Mhm.
I'm at a point now where you can give me the toughest feedback and I'll thank you for it at the
Yeah.
end. And I'll say, thanks for caring enough to give it to me. That was a journey for
Yep.
me. It was not
Yep.
easy because it played into that weakness I had, that insecurity I had.
Yeah.
So I think having that depth, understanding of yourself. A little bit comes with that with age and wisdom, and just being open to what people are telling you about yourself. And if you've heard it a few times, it probably is true.
Yeah, and that always goes along with the question I had too of like, how do we kind of dismantle those self-imposed limits and what are some common barriers that you do see? And that's probably one of them. And how can people in these fields start really breaking down those barriers? So it sounds like, um, you know, asking, going, getting some therapy. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention on
Yeah,
that?
the value of supervision is a lost art.
Okay.
I used to if your boss offers it and you should offer to supervision with somebody, let's say it's a half hour a week, an hour a week. And what happens is we all get busy and I think it turns into drive-by supervision, I call it, where you're walking down the hallway and you go, "Oh, I can't make my supervisory appointment. Is that okay?" The employee will probably say, "Sure," because they may not even really want it. But if you are being supervised by somebody that you look up to, take advantage of that supervision. If it's a half hour, ask for the half hour. Do the supervision. Listen. Take the time to get the feedback. And really want to look at yourself, want to grow. And again, is to do these kind of take these assessments of yourself, self-assessment, my personality type,
Mm-hmm.
my leadership style,
Your strengths.
understand your strengths
Mm-hmm.
because and don't just rest on those. Oh, I'm a great democratic leader. I'm amazing at sitting in a room and getting consensus. Okay, now that I know that, maybe I don't have to work on that as much, but I have to work on a different form of maybe I'm not a great visionary. Maybe I'm not getting the mission out to everybody of where we want to go. So there's the visionary leader. So you want to work on every aspect of it. I just think it's a thing of becoming open. If you want to be a great leader where people will say, I'd stand in front of a bus for you. That's the kind of leader I want to be. I want the people that work for me to be like, has our back. He cares. So I'll
Mhm.
go around and get to know the people that I lead. Be friendly without necessarily being friends because you don't want to break boundaries and things, but get to know people. And then when there's a crisis, they can talk to you.
Yeah.
Ask them about their kids, ask them about their family. Those things are really important. If you want high productivity out of your employees and they're struggling in their marriage, one of their kids is being bullied at school, and
Mhm.
you've never opened up the space for that to be shared, that's going to come into the workplace for
Yep.
them. They're
Yeah.
going to feel it. And if you don't open up for that and say this is work, that's not appropriate here, okay, that there's an argument to be made for that, but my argument would be no, there is a place for it here because I want to know what you're struggling with, so you can be the happiest human that you can be,
Yeah.
the most complete person. Allow time for people to go home and exercise, eat right, all kinds of good things that affect us, our brain, body, and soul.
Yeah. So good. I want to know because, you know, I think we go into these helping professions, right? And it starts with like, we're the first ones to help. We have compassion, we have empathy, and then there comes a point sometimes where we don't, right? And there's something called like compassion fatigue. And I think that I've seen a lot of people that are in the helping professionals experience this. And I also see it in leaders. Like it doesn't have to be
Oh yeah.
necessarily like a helping professional, but like running your own business. I've seen it, my husband runs his own business and he is a definitely the helper. He was a former police officer. He probably gets it, from that. He's the first one to want to help, and then there's, a compassion fatigue that comes in when we
Yep.
don't see maybe the result that we want or what have you. What do you um what do you think about this, and how do we not is there a should we be separating what our work from family, or should we
Yep.
not? Like
Yeah.
how does this mix?
I think what the first thing to do is to do exactly what you said is this doesn't happen in business much, is to sit with your senior team and say, there's something called compassion fatigue, fatigue out there. How many of us are feeling it?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
give people the space to share it, talk about it. We all do go through it, or to say, to even hold up your hand and say, This week I just can't do it, guys. I need somebody to step up for me and help." And
Mhm.
you need to just step out of the box. One of my mentors, owned the company that I ended up being the president CEO of, did this with us, and it was the most brilliant thing. She sat us all down. She said, "You're all working really hard. I want you all to pick something you would love to do that has nothing to do with this job, and pursue it." And we were all sitting around going, "How cool is that?" Then when I went home, I'm like, "This is really cool." This wasn't about the results for the company. So somebody picked a cooking class. I picked doing a radio show like Frasier, a call-in radio show with people sharing their problems. I ended up finding a radio station that let me do it. It was a
Oh, cool.
passion. It was a dream. It was something I always wanted to do, and I ended up doing it. It made me like happier. But it was just so cool to have a boss that opened that space for that.
Mm.
um is to check in with your people and let them do things, and we have to find our other hobbies and interests. For me, exercise is a huge thing.
Mhm.
I A lot
Mhm.
of people say, "Oh, you do it, for weight loss, or trying to," and really that's, I guess that's a nice factor of it, but I really do it for my mental well-being. When I'm exercising, it's a way. I'm not
Mhm.
somebody who gets angry, yells, or screams, but when you're on that elliptical, you're doing the weights, you get that frustration out and you do it.
Mhm.
Whatever that may be for you, this podcast does something for you. It gives you, it gives you energy and strength. It's like your spinach at Popeye, probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just replenishes you to hear all the good in the world. Like when I listen to your podcast, you have so many incredible people on. I would think, and then you probably even become friendly with those people. So
Mhm.
you've
Mhm.
lived that. So you might have been feeling some fatigue in the ER room, where you brought bright light and happiness in another way. That's going to now come back to the ER, and you're going to
Mhm.
be happier there.
Yeah.
is that we have to pursue things that make us happy, and we need to find places to work where our bosses get that, get mental health is as important as
Mhm.
anything else. I
Mhm.
always love to say, businesses are so, what's your IQ? I want to be around people that say IQ and EQ, emotional
Mhm.
intelligence, intellectual intelligence. You're only as strong as those two are good.
Mm.
I don't want, and not, and somebody who's all emotional intelligence with no IQ isn't great either. You want to meld the two. And somebody, I want to work for people like that. I want to become somebody like that, and to be constantly on that journey of trying to get there. But we're all going to be there. And if you're a helping person, it's hit you and you can see it. Our shoulders shrug a little bit, a
Mhm.
coloring goes out of our face.
Mhm.
And we only can do so much. So open up
Yeah.
that space to talk about it. And if you're feeling it in your organization, is to do, I mean, for lack of another term, a support group on it. Like, hey, I think we all need to talk about it, and we all need to support each other and be there and give each other a time out.
Yeah.
Let somebody, I love, play hooky for a couple days. Take
Mhm.
off. I got it for you. And then when I need it, will you be there for me?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it's just so flowing right now because I was like, yeah, that is literally the next thing I was thinking of is like we live in such a fast place or fast-paced like disruption prone world.
Yes.
And I think it's another thing that really impacts our ability to have more of that EQ that you're talking about is because we have an enormous to-do list, right? And we forget about just being a human, right? And taking care of that. What do you think um can be helpful for like dealing with this fast-paced kind of disruption prone world that we live in?
Yeah, that's really tough. I would, the song, I have 3 daughters, so I know Miley Cyrus well, The
I
Climb.
love it. Yeah, it's actually I have that on my I love hiking,
Yes.
and I have that on my hiking playlist.
Yeah.
It's the
What
best.
I realized on my journey going up to leadership is the
Mm,
climb was so much more fun than getting
mhm,
this so-called tip of the iceberg. And once you get there, there's all kinds of studies on success that there's a depression. The night of athletes have won Super Bowls or run marathons, they're actually in a hotel room a little depressed because they supposedly hit this height of where everything's supposed to be perfect. And they're like, but I still don't feel different.
mhm.
Is just enjoy the climb, that you're never going to cross everything off your to-do list. You're
Yeah.
always going to be on it, but as long as you keep going
Mm,
up something and enjoy that a little bit and stop wishing for Saturday, or I
yeah.
can't wait till June when we're going to Greece, right? Okay, but you're just wishing away 7 months of your life, like, trying to get to some goal, or and realize that every day getting out of bed is a goal. There's a great um video, a gentleman, he was a general in an army, and he said, what's the most important thing to do? You would think he would come up with some really intense thing, and he goes, the most important thing I think to do is to make your bed
Mm,
every day. Get up.
mhm.
It's a sense of accomplishment. You get up, you made your bed, you did something, you got up, you have a accomplishment the first thing of the day, and you should feel really good about it. And it's a really cool thing because that is true. You got up, you were able to get to work, you got through it. If you're somebody who has kids, you have a car
Mhm.
payment, you have, I mean, even the trying to buy a home these days for young folks in their
I
20s. I
know,
can't
yeah.
imagine
I
what that's
can't
like.
either.
Yeah. And all this is weighing on people's minds. And especially, working with folks in education or even nursing and all, people will say to me, how am I ever going to buy a home one day if I'm doing these fields? I don't even see how I can do it. So they have that stress on their mind too.
Yeah.
Is just taking things one day at a time, one step at a time, and just take each accomplishment as it comes. I love to, what's so great about a phone now is you can put every day, just put a few things to get done and then cross it off
Mm,
that you got it done.
mhm.
Again, is look for organizations and look for people to work for that get this stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to people on interviews. You interview the person you're going to hire as much as they're interviewing you, especially now in education.
Yep.
It's so hard to find teachers. They're interviewing me. I'm begging to get you.
Yep.
So people will ask this stuff. Are you going to take my mental health into consideration? I love this. The power of the employee has gone up.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I say, as an employee, take advantage of that. It used to be an employer's world, right? I'm your boss. Do what I say. Those
Yeah,
days are over.
right.
That doesn't fly. That kind of leader is not seen as a good leader anymore.
Mhm.
So there is some benefit to my place as an employee is a strong position to be in, and I need to take care of myself, and I need to let somebody know how I'm feeling. That's the thing again, is when we have or I have an employee that's struggling and they tell me they're struggling, I know if you just don't say anything to me and you stop coming into work, I'm just going to think you're not coming into work. But share, be open,
Yeah.
and if you share and you're open and you're punished for that, it's not the right place for you probably to work.
Mm.
You don't want to be in a place where you'd be punished for
Yeah,
to be real.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I wanna know, what does it look like in your life now to be doing good and doing well?
Yeah. So one thing I told so I have a school in New Jersey and a school for students with special needs, and the social worker, she was a social worker, was I was trying to talk her into running the school. I'm like, you have it. You're amazing. You're incredible. She goes, Mike, I don't want to give up my caseload. And I think I mentioned this at the beginning. I'm like, well, what's your caseload right now? You have 25 students. How about 300 students? That's your new caseload. So, and she wanted to buy a house. If she's going to be a social worker forever, it was going to be tough. So the thing is that I wanted to inspire her to see bigger, see the whole school. And not only is this the students, your caseload got bigger, all the families are now part of your caseload. Everyone you lead's part of the caseload. You now run the organization. It's so much fun. It's so exciting. It's exhilarating. There's never a dull moment. So you can still do good, help people. That's what I want to do. I want to do mission driven work, working with students with special needs, students on the autism spectrum, students with
Mhm.
behavioral disabilities. But I also need to do well. I need to pay my bills. I got, my
Mhm.
youngest is in college. She, of course, picked a private school, these small private schools.
Mhm.
They're not
Yep,
cheap.
I hear ya.
Yeah, that we just got an assessment on our taxes went up
Mhm.
dramatically. If I'm not doing well and doing good, I'm not going to be as good at work if I can't pay my bills. So again, what I want to say to everybody is, if you want to help and never move to leadership, that's great. We need you. God bless you, and thank God you did it. You and I have done it. But if you want to take the step up, it's a bigger caseload.
Mhm.
It's more people that you can help. Don't look at it as you're giving up the ability to do good for others. Don't look at it as giving up your calling. Don't look at it as giving up your passion. Looking at it as expanding upon it.
Mm.
And that's what doing good and doing well is being there for people, being good to people, doing mission driven work, whatever that is. All of our any job is adding to society, but
Yeah,
also trying to do well for yourself. You're not giving up on your chosen profession when you do that.
yeah. I think that's such a great reminder, for anybody listening. It's important to be doing good and doing well. It it
I
I
think so.
it really just, really sits with me, just that whole sentence as a whole.
Yeah,
I
and
think it's so
Julie,
important.
yeah, when I think of, and I mentioned this to you before we started about your husband, Mike,
Mhm.
who seems like the coolest guy on planet Earth, by the
He
way.
is.
But what's cool is he's done good and he's done well. He was a
Mhm.
police officer.
Yeah.
What police officer nursing? Like you two picked probably
Yeah.
the greatest servant leadership roles, right? So he's out there helping people, being there for people, being on the front line. And he did it to a certain extent where he got his 10,000 hours,
Mhm.
20,000 hours.
Mhm.
And he said, I think I have a little more to offer. Like I'm not letting go of all those skills.
Mhm.
I'm expanding upon it.
Yeah.
And not only that, he seems like he's on a mission, and you as well, for male wellness,
Mhm.
looking at
Mhm.
yourself as a man, to say therapy isn't a negative word.
Yep.
It's not a wimpy thing to get therapy if you're a man, or look at yourself.
No.
So, he's an embodiment of doing good and doing well. You are, again, you're a trauma nurse, and you've developed this podcast that's really powerful and helping people. So you're living and breathing it, the two of you guys as a couple. And I think that's important too, is to get people in your circle that
Mhm.
believe in what your mission is. If you're married to somebody who doesn't love what you do, or thinks it's like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? You should be doing, it's not gonna, that's gonna be tough. So
Yeah.
surround yourself with people, and you find that again, it doesn't seem like you or Mike feel that you're gave up on your calling by just
Well,
going beyond your calling a little.
and it's interesting because, I will say that it's really important to always just keep an open mind because, to be honest, when he and we talk about this a lot, but, when he left police work, I was actually upset. I'm like, "I don't wanna talk to you about this other stuff." Like, I wanted to talk to him about stuff that, like, I saw too, it's like, I can understand the girl that fell off the building and what he saw, and, like, I saw it too, like, we had
Yes.
so much to talk about, like, maybe it was, like, a little trauma bonding there, but, like, I missed those conversations, and instead of being open-minded to new conversations and learning myself, I wanted to put him in a box, and I wanted to say, "This was who I married, and this is what he does, and this is what I can expect," right? And, like, really, that's not the purpose of life,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
and we're human beings, and we're not supposed to be who we are, 10 years ago, or like if you're 24, like I would be really sad if you were still acting like you were 14, like
Yeah.
we're not supposed to be who we were 10 years ago. And I really had to take a step back and check myself in that manner. So if something's not going right in that area, like maybe, take a step back, maybe journal about that. Maybe like, could you be a little bit more open minded? Could you be a little bit more curious into something that you could be doing or that your spouse is doing? I think it's just a good reminder of like learning from the pain that the box I put us in, and to see
Yeah.
where it is now is a beautiful thing. And, to think if I would have just stayed in that box, like there would be no box anymore, And
Yeah.
so it's really, I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I love that you're willing to share the good, the bad, and the ugly
Mhm.
kind of things. Because
Mhm.
I know you even say this with, if you look at somebody's Instagram account and
Yeah.
everything's perfect, makeup's
Yeah.
perfect, the family's perfect, but
Mm.
there's more to it than
Yeah.
just that. And I remember when I started as a leader, there was somebody I would present things. I would present my weaknesses as sort of like not even weaknesses, my journey of
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah.
And the one guy said to me, Mike, he goes after the fact, he goes, I used to think that was weakness. Like you're our boss, you're getting up there saying you're struggling, or like I thought you were supposed to be giving us like everything's perfect. And he goes, now I see what a powerful thing you did to like to it just gave us all like we could take a breath that we don't have to be perfect. The guy who's leading the organization is up there saying he's struggling. I can
Mhm.
struggle.
Mhm.
And when you share that, it lets other people to say, okay, she's not going to judge me that we're struggling with, as you grow,
Mhm.
it's hard to always grow in two parallel lines. You sometimes
Yes.
will
Very
perpendicular
much so.
cross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to be prepared for those crosses.
Yeah.
And that's where us in the helping professions are great too, because we expect that. We
Yeah.
don't run from it. We're not scared of a crisis.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
I'm all about the plan. In fact, even last night, I'm like, okay, so let's set up a meeting because this between me and my husband. We
Yeah.
need to make sure all of our goals are in set for next year, and we got to plan it. And my husband's like totally a doer, but like
Yeah.
planning all these other obstacles, he's like, why? And I'm like, because my brain works that way, and I want to prepare.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
So it's fun. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, we set up meetings for those things, like it's important to like, where are we going to be? What does it look like? Because we might be doing two different things. Like I might be at home, doing what I'm doing. He's running his show over here, but we have to have some commonality somewhere, right? And
Yes.
that's where like it comes in to have your family goals and like what do you want for your relationship? What do you want for your family? What does it look like? What does it feel like? You
Yep.
know? So we make sure we have meetings on those topics. So we're on the same page regardless if we're doing the same job or we're not.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly, and it's just like, we talk about running a business. It's like you have
Mhm.
your home is
Mhm.
a business too, and
Mhm.
you gotta meet, and you
Yes.
gotta discuss
Yes.
and process
Mhm.
and do all these kinds of things. So it's not just in the workplace, it's at the
Yeah.
home. You gotta merge them together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
And we each bring skills to the table. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Complementary, yep.
Yeah, well, it's been awesome, to
Thank you
chat
so
about
much.
this, like, it really I mean, it builds courage in me, and I hope everybody listening is just, feeling that as well, like, "Oh, yeah, like, I do have these skills," or maybe you're gonna go take a test right now and see what your strengths are, or, and really use those, in helping you either get to the next level or just, get better as a person so you can keep doing good and doing well.
Yep, we need more
Yeah.
helping people in leadership roles,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I love
tha
that. Well,
thank you.
thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been great. Everybody go grab his book, Doing Good and Doing Well. What's the best place to connect with you and get the book and everything?
Yeah, the book it was published by Rowman and Littlefield, so it's on their website, but Amazon, Barnes& and Noble,
Yeah.
wherever books are sold, and then I have a website, michaellkaufman.com. It has all the book and all kinds of information on it.
Yeah. Well, we'll include that in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, of course, to everyone listening, I just hope you're walking away with a new appreciation for the power of empathy, resilience, and the skills that make us all stronger in challenging times. If this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it and subscribing to Life Without Secrets for more conversations that empower us all to lead with purpose. Until next time, remember leadership isn't just a role, it's a mindset, and we all have the power to make a difference. Hey there, it's Jillian from Life Without Secrets. Ever feel like you and your partner aren't quite on the same page? Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our latest issue of Truthful magazine. It's packed with insights and stories about bridging that gap and finding a deeper connection. We're diving into real conversations about needs, feelings, and how honest dialogue can rekindle that closeness that you've been missing. Why not explore this together? Go grab your free copy right now at lifewithoutsecrets.com and turn those pages into shared moments. Can't wait for you to dive in and share your thoughts with me.